Victoria Whitmore sat motionless at table 12. Watching the clock like it was counting out her humiliation. 37 minutes. Her wine had gone flat. Her meal untouched. The last text from Marcus read simply, "On my way." Before going silent. She stood. Pulling her coat tight. Forcing herself to look calm. Until a quiet voice beside her broke through. "Excuse me, would you like to share the table?" She looked up. To see a single dad shielding his daughter's hand. Like he was shielding the whole world. The day had been brutal even before the restaurant. Victoria had spent 6 hours in a boardroom battle. The executive board pushing her to sign off on a development deal. That made her stomach turn. Buy out a residential estate at rock-bottom prices. Displace families who'd lived there for generations. Erect luxury flats that would stand empty as investments. The numbers worked. The optics didn't. She'd left that meeting feeling like she needed to remember what it was like to be human. Not just a signature on acquisition papers. That's why she'd agreed to meet Marcus Reed tonight. He'd been introduced through mutual connections. As someone who understood her world. Someone who could handle the pressure of dating a woman. Whose face appeared in financial magazines. Someone, they said. Who saw her as more than a trophy or a business opportunity. The restaurant she'd chosen was deliberate. No paparazzi camping outside. No business associates who might interrupt with merger talk. Just a family-owned Italian place in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of spot where normal people came for anniversaries. And birthday dinners. She wanted for once to feel like one of them. Marcus had suggested somewhere more upscale. But she'd insisted. She should have known then. 10 minutes in. The first text arrived. Traffic on the bridge. She nodded to herself. Ordered water. Studied the menu she already knew by heart. 20 minutes in. Another message. Accident causing delays. The waiter had approached twice. Asking gently if she'd like to order a starter while she waited. She declined. Smile tight. Aware of the glances from other tables. At 30 minutes. She saw it. Not a text about traffic or accidents. But a social media story from someone she vaguely knew. There was Marcus. Clearly visible in the background of a city center bar. Drink in hand. Laughing with a group she didn't recognize. The timestamp read 18 minutes ago. She'd stared at her phone. A cold understanding settling over her. This wasn't traffic. This was a test. Or worse. Just plain indifference. She was successful. Powerful. Wealthy. And apparently still someone who could be left waiting at a table. Like she didn't matter. The shame of it burned hotter than anger. She could buy this restaurant. She could buy the whole street. But she couldn't buy the one thing she'd wanted tonight. To not be alone. Victoria started gathering her things. Mind already composing the calm. Dignified exit. She'd leave cash on the table for the wine she hadn't drunk. Walk out with her head high. And tomorrow Marcus would get a single-line text. That she was no longer interested. Clean. Professional. Utterly empty. That's when she heard the voice. Across the restaurant. Henry Carter was counting notes from his wallet. With the kind of careful precision that spoke of too many months. Where every pound mattered. His daughter Emma sat across from him. 8 years old. Watching her father with eyes that saw everything. Henry had got a rejection email that morning. The factory maintenance position he'd been sure about. The one that would have meant proper health cover. And maybe even a chance to save for Emma's future. They'd gone with someone else. Someone with a degree, they said. Even though Henry could fix anything they put in front of him. And had 15 years of experience to prove it. Emma had asked him that afternoon. Voice small. If they could go out for dinner. Just once. Like Mum used to do. And Henry, who'd been about to suggest sandwiches in the park, had looked at his daughter's hopeful face. And couldn't say no. The restaurant wasn't fancy. But it wasn't cheap either. He'd chosen it because it was near the bus stop. Because it was safe. Because the online menu showed prices he could just about manage. If he was careful. One main for Emma. One for himself. Maybe a small pudding to share if she finished her veg. He watched Emma now as she studied the menu. With exaggerated seriousness. Her finger tracing the words she was still learning to read. She was wearing her best dress. The blue one with flowers that was getting too small. But she refused to give up. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail he'd learned to do. From YouTube tutorials. Not perfect. But neat enough. Henry had ordered the cheapest main. Smiled when the waiter brought bread. And carefully folded his napkin into the shape of a paper crane. To make Emma giggle. These were the moments he lived for. The tiny pockets of joy he could still give her. Even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. That's when Emma looked past him. And her expression shifted. "Daddy," she whispered. "That lady over there is all by herself. Did someone leave her?" Henry followed his daughter's gaze to table 12. Where a woman in an expensive coat sat alone. Phone dark on the table. Staring at nothing. Even from this distance. He could see the tension in her shoulders. The way she was holding herself together through sheer will. "Don't stare, sweetheart," Henry said gently. But he couldn't look away either. There was something in the woman's posture that he recognized. The specific kind of loneliness that came from being left behind. He'd felt it himself 2 years ago. When Emma's mum walked out. When he'd had to explain to a 6-year-old. That sometimes people leave. And it's not because you did anything wrong. Emma tugged his sleeve. She looked sad. She did. And suddenly. Henry was thinking about all the times someone had shown him kindness. When he needed it most. The neighbors brought groceries when he lost his job. The teacher who stayed late to help Emma with reading. The stranger at the laundrette who had given him change. When the machine ate his last quid. Their table had 2 empty seats. It was a small thing. Maybe an unwelcome thing. But standing up and walking away felt worse than the risk of embarrassment. Henry pushed back his chair before he could overthink it. Emma's eyes went wide. He walked a few steps to table 12. Heart hammering. Painfully aware of his worn work boots. And the fraying cuff of his jacket. Victoria was reaching for her purse. When a shadow fell across her table. She looked up. Defensive walls already rising. Expecting the waiter with another pitying offer to take her order. Instead. She found herself looking at a man about her age. Maybe slightly older. With kind eyes. And calloused hands clasped nervously in front of him. Behind him stood a little girl peering around his legs. With unfiltered curiosity. "Excuse me," the man said. Voice quiet and respectful. "I don't mean to intrude. But if you're not waiting for someone. Our table has extra room. You're welcome to join us if you'd like." Victoria's first instinct was automatic refusal. She didn't need charity. She didn't need pity from strangers. The words "I'm fine" were already forming. When the little girl stepped forward. "You looked lonely," Emma said. With the devastating honesty only children possess. "You can sit with us. We're celebrating," Henry said softly. But there was no reprimand in it. Victoria looked between them. The man wasn't leering or trying to impress her. There was no agenda in his face. No calculation. And the child. She was looking at Victoria like she was just another person. Who might need kindness. Not a CEO. Or a failed date. Or anything other than someone sitting alone. When was the last time anyone had looked at her that way? What are you celebrating? Victoria heard herself ask. Emma beamed. Daddy took me out for dinner just because. Something cracked in Victoria's chest. She glanced at their table. Saw the modest meals. The careful way everything was arranged. This wasn't a family with money to spare. This was a dad stretching his budget. To make his daughter smile. And he was offering her a seat anyway. I'd like that. Victoria said. Surprising herself. Thank you. Henry's relief was visible. He helped carry her wine glass over. Emma chattering the whole way. About how she'd never shared a table with a stranger before. And wasn't this exciting? Victoria found herself settling into a chair. That was slightly wobbly. At a table that was slightly too small. Feeling more real than she had in months. I'm Henry. The man said once they were settled. This is Emma. Victoria. She almost added her last name. Then stopped. Tonight she was just Victoria. The waiter appeared confused but accommodating. Adjusting their orders. And bringing an extra place setting. Emma narrated her menu choices with elaborate detail. She was getting chicken parmigiana. Because it had cheese and chicken and sauce all together. And didn't that sound perfect? Victoria found herself agreeing that it did. Indeed sound perfect. What do you do, Victoria? Henry asked. The polite small talk of strangers. She hesitated. The truth would change everything. It always did. I work in an office. She said finally. Lots of meetings, lots of decisions. What about you? I fix things. Henry replied. Equipment, electrical systems, whatever breaks down. I work maintenance mostly. Daddy can fix anything. Emma announced proudly. He fixed my bike and the toaster and Mrs. Patterson's sink. Now, so sounds like you're good at what you do. Victoria said to Henry. And meant it. He shrugged. Uncomfortable with praise. I do my best. The conversation flowed easier than it had any right to. Emma asked Victoria if she had a family. And Victoria found herself admitting she didn't. Not really. Her parents were alive. But distant. Her siblings caught up in their own lives. Emma. With a child's logic. Declared that Victoria could be their friend then. And friends were kind of like family. Victoria watched Henry cut the best portion of his chicken. And slide it onto Emma's plate without a word. Keeping the smaller piece for himself. She watched him fold his napkin into increasingly elaborate shapes. To make his daughter laugh. She watched him listen to Emma's rambling story about her day at school. With the kind of attention that suggested nothing else in the world mattered more. When was the last time someone had paid attention to her that way? Not to Victoria Whitmore, CEO. Just to her. Do you ever feel like people only see what they want to see? Victoria asked suddenly. The wine making her bold. Like they look at you and they've already decided who you are. Henry was quiet for a moment. Every day. He said finally. People look at my work clothes and they think they know my whole story. But they don't know about Emma. They don't know about the things that actually matter. You were waiting for someone. Emma said. Connecting dots with a child's directness. Did they not come? That's personal. Henry started. But Victoria shook her head. No, it's okay. Yes, I was waiting for someone. He didn't show up. That's mean. Emma pronounced with finality. You're nice. He should have come. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. And blinked them back hard. Thank you, Emma. Henry's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Then at Victoria. I'm sorry. He said quietly. That must have hurt. It was the simplest acknowledgement. No platitudes about how she deserved better. Or how it was his loss. Just recognition that yes. It hurt. And somehow that made it bearable. The worst part. Victoria found herself saying. Is feeling stupid for hoping. She stopped. Shocked at her own honesty. She never talked like this. Never showed vulnerability. But there was something about this table. These people. That made her usual armor feel unnecessary. That's when her phone lit up with a video call. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. Victoria stared at it for 3 rings. Before answering. His face filled the screen. Background noise of music and laughter obvious behind him. Hey babe. He said. Words slightly slurred. Sorry about tonight. I had a small accident. Had to get the car. You're at a bar. Victoria said flatly. What? No, this is just. I can see you, Marcus. I can hear the music. You're not in hospital or on the side of the road. You're at a bar in town. His expression shifted. Caught. Look, something came up. Business networking. You understand how it is. I understand perfectly. Victoria's voice could have frozen steel. Don't call me again. She ended the call before he could respond. Set her phone face down on the table. Her hands were shaking. Emma and Henry sat in careful silence. Then Emma reached across. And patted Victoria's hand with sticky child fingers. At least you're not alone now. She said simply. Victoria looked at this little girl. The stranger who'd shown her more kindness in an hour than Marcus had shown in months. No. She said softly. I'm not alone now. Henry didn't cry. Didn't ask questions. He just quietly pushed a glass of water closer to her. And changed the subject to something lighter. They finished their meal talking about small things. Emma's favorite subjects at school. Henry's proudest repair jobs. Victoria's confession that she'd never learned to ride a bike. Emma insisted this was a tragedy that must be remedied immediately. Which made them all laugh. When the bill came. Victoria reached for her purse. Please let me. No. Henry said firmly but kindly. Thank you. But no, I'm the one who intruded on your celebration. Victoria protested. You didn't intrude. You joined us. Henry's smile was gentle. And honestly, having you here tonight. You made Emma happy. That's worth more than you splitting the bill. Victoria understood. Then this wasn't about money or who could afford what. This was about dignity. About Henry being able to provide for his daughter. And share something with a stranger. Without it becoming a transaction. She backed down. Respecting that boundary. Then thank you for the seat at your table. I needed it more than I knew. Anytime. Henry said. And sounded like he meant it. They walked out together into the cool evening air. The car park was nearly empty. Street lights casting long shadows. Henry and Emma were heading to the bus stop. Victoria's car sat in solitary luxury near the entrance. Will you be all right getting home? Henry asked. Always thinking of others first. I'll be fine, Victoria assured him. She crouched down to Emma's level. Thank you for sharing your daddy with me tonight. You're very lucky to have him. I know, Emma said seriously. Then she hugged Victoria quickly. Fiercely. Before Henry could tell her not to hug strangers. Victoria found herself hugging back. Breathing in the scent of children's shampoo. And innocence. They didn't exchange numbers. Didn't make promises to stay in touch. It was just a moment. Crystallized and perfect. And then they went their separate ways. Henry and Emma disappeared into the bus shelter. Victoria sat in her car for a long moment. Before starting the engine. She'd remember this night. The worn table. The paper crane Henry had left behind. The way Emma's laughter had sounded like hope. The question that had saved her from drowning in humiliation. Would you like to share the table? 2 weeks later. Victoria stood in her executive office. 60 floors above the city. Reviewing the residential displacement project one final time. Before the site inspection. The paperwork was immaculate. The legal team had covered every angle. The profit projections were staggering. All she had to do was show up. Walk through the neighborhood slated for demolition. And authorize the final phase. Her assistant, Rachel, appeared in the doorway. Car is ready whenever you are. The site manager was already there with the full team. Victoria nodded. Gathering her tablet and coat. Let's go. The neighborhood was older than she'd realized from the aerial photographs. Trees lined the streets despite the neglected infrastructure. Children's toys dotted small gardens. Someone had painted a mural on "I hired you to follow instructions. Not play engineer." Henry stood slowly. Wiping his hands on a rag. "With respect, Mr. Hale. If you don't fix the ground fault issue, someone's going to get seriously hurt. These buildings are still occupied. These buildings are scheduled for demolition in 6 weeks. We're not investing in major electrical overhauls. For tenants who are already relocating. 6 weeks is enough time for a child to get electrocuted," Henry said quietly. Firmly. That's when he saw Victoria. Recognition flashed across his face. Followed immediately by confusion. And something else. A dawning uncomfortable realization. He saw her expensive suit. The deference Bernie showed her. The tablet in her hands with the company logo. "You're the CEO," he said flatly. Not a question. Victoria felt the ground shift beneath her. "Henry, Ms. Whitmore." Bernie interrupted. Clearly annoyed by the disruption. "I apologize for this employee's insubordination. I'll handle it." "Give us a moment," Victoria said. Her executive voice brooking no argument. Bernie's eyebrows rose. But he retreated. Taking the apprentice with him. Victoria and Henry faced each other. Across the exposed electrical panel like a chasm. "I didn't know," she said first. "When I saw you here, I didn't know you'd be working on this project. But you knew what the project was." His voice was level. But she could hear the disappointment underneath. Tearing down this neighborhood. Pushing out people who can't afford to go anywhere else. It's not that simple, is it? Henry's laugh was bitter. "The night we met, you were just Victoria. Someone having a bad day. Someone who seemed kind. Was that real? Or were you just what? Researching how the other half lives?" "It was real," Victoria said fiercely. "That was the most real I've been in years. But this is real, too." Henry gestured at the building around them. "These families, my work. The fact that in 6 weeks this whole neighborhood gets erased. So people like you can build luxury flats that'll sit empty. As investment properties. Victoria flinched. Every word was true. I'm trying to make it better than it could be. There's relocation assistance, fair compensation. Fair market value for a neighborhood you deliberately undervalued. Henry's expertise showed. I've seen the assessment reports. I know what these buildings are actually worth. And it's twice what your company's offering. Before Victoria could respond, Bernie's voice echoed from the hallway. Whitmore. We're on a schedule. I have to go. Victoria said. Hating herself. Yeah. Henry said quietly. You do. She walked away. Feeling his eyes on her.